Public Safety Committee meeting. My name is Alicia Kay, the Committee Chair and 5th District Councilwoman. If my colleagues would introduce themselves.
Catherine Shields, 4th District at Large.
Heather Hall, 1st District in District.
Thank you. And we had a slight delay this morning to make sure we had quorum. Councilman Lucas will be out today, but we will begin, Madam Clerk, with the first item on the legislative item.
Yes, ma'am. Resolution number 170097, adopting a digital equity strategic plan to ensure all residents have equal access to the digital economy and directing the city manager to implement its 6 priorities and conduct annual reviews of the policy.
Good morning.
Good morning, members of the committee. I'm McClain, Bryant. I'm the policy director for Mayor Sly James.
Rick Usher, City Manager's Office.
And we're here today to provide an update on the digital equity strategic plan that we first presented to you all about a month ago. Just for a quick review, the purpose of the plan is to frame the issue of the digital divide for council and residents, to provide a shared understanding of the issue of the digital divide, to highlight the work that we've done in Kansas City to date, as well as some of the work that's being done nationally, to outline a course of action for going forward, to demonstrate the city's commitment to digital equity via the plan itself as well as the adopting resolution. But this plan is not intended to be an exhaustive list of digital inclusion programs. It's intended more so to provide a basis for action and then recommended various ways that council can act. So as far as an update from the last committee presentation, in the plan that you have before you, we've incorporated Councilwoman Hall's edits, and thank you, Councilwoman Hall, for taking the time to go through it and provide those edits. I appreciate that. We've also incorporated, provided to the committee a more thorough explanation of the HUD rules of last year that via email last week, so I hope you all got that. We met with staff in the housing department about those HUD rules and the housing related pathways to make sure that we're all on the same page and in agreement. We also met with a representative of the health department regarding the community health improvement plan that they've been working on and how digital equity touches upon that. We've met with various stakeholder groups, including the Whole Person, which is an organization that represents the disabled, as well as the executive director of the Urban Neighborhood Initiative. And then we also had several in-person community meetings, as well as sought online community input. With regard to the HUD rules, HUD last year adopted 2 rules that implicate digital inclusion, the first being 24 CFR 570.201. This rule was amended to provide that broadband infrastructure and digital literacy skills training qualifies for HUD funding such as CDBG. HUD also revised 24 CFR 91, which was amended to provide that internet service providers and digital literacy skills providers must be consulted as part of local government 5-year consolidated planning processes. That second rule has an effective date of January 2018. In meeting with staff in the housing department, we sat down and ideated over the housing related pathways in the plan. And some things that you'll see in the revised version of the plan that's before you is that we've included language for compliance with the recent HUD rules. We've also included language in the pathways for an overlay of the housing department's priority areas and then broadband connectivity in the city. And then we also revised the language dealing with minor home repair applications, and in those applications asking the applicants if they have broadband connectivity so that we can connect them with ISPs that provide low-cost broadband service. We also met with Sarah Martin Anderson in the health department and shared with her a copy of the plan, which is important because digital equity closely relates to health equity. And for that reason, digital equity is included in the CHIP, specifically access to health care, ACA enrollment, health-related information online, positive health impact or positive impact on health outcomes are all enabled by greater access to the internet. So Sarah Martin Anderson is here to speak briefly about digital equity in the chip.
Thank you. Good morning. Nice to see you again. I'm Dr. Sarah Martin Anderson, and my division is Community Engagement and Policy and Accountability, and that is the division that supports the Mayor's Health Commission. So I'm here on behalf of both the Health Department and the Health Commission to state our support for digital equity as a public health issue. You've seen this slide before, but I put it up again just to show you that digital equity is really a foundation for a lot of the determinants of health, social and economic factors, behaviors, the physical environment, and also access to care. In the CHIP specifically, digital equity lives, we can go to the next slide. Digital equity lives in the education issue area of the CHIP, but that was really before I had a time to talk to Rick and McClain about digital equity, and we really realized it's actually all throughout the CHIP. So just some examples is, access to learning outside and inside the classroom, economic opportunity. What I'm really excited about is what digital equity will do for our access to prevention for mental and physical health. So utilizing more telemedicine, telemental health to try to avoid really costly emergency department visits, which is one of our CHIP objectives. And something that we don't talk about a ton in the CHIP, but really is all throughout it, is social cohesion and capital. So how does access to digital equity make us less socially isolated? And we know social isolation is a huge health risk, especially for those who are aging in place, or maybe new parents and access to resources. So we're really excited about this partnership. I'm really grateful to Rick and McClain for engaging the Health Department and the Health Commission in this way. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Sarah. We have the privilege of working together on the Health Commission along with Councilman Hall as well, and appreciate the work of those committee members and their input being incorporated into this plan. I have some questions, but I'll save them for the end.
Okay. So the interplay between the CHIP and this plan really speaks to the cross-departmental collaboration that'll be necessary to really effectuate digital equity in the city. We've also set up some stakeholder meetings with organizations representing some of the groups most impacted by the digital divide. We met with leadership over at The Whole Person. Again, that's an agency for the physically and mentally disabled, and discussed, how most of the disabled are also low income and thus impacted by the digital divide, as well as some of the unique software and hardware needs of the disabled, for instance, enlarged keyboards or dictation software. We also met with the executive director of the Urban Neighborhood Initiative. This is an initiative to rebuild the east side of Kansas City. As the plan states and the maps show, the digital divide is prevalent in the entirety of the city, but most pronounced in the 3rd and 5th districts where the UNI's footprint is. And we discussed with them some of the UNI's current digital inclusion efforts. For example, they're working on a Wi-Fi network in the city as a pilot program to connect more of their residents to broadband. We had 4 community meetings at various times of day and at various locations. We added one over the weekend per Councilwoman Hall's suggestion. We met at Southeast Library, KC North Community Center, Blueford Library, and Central Library, and received a variety of different input. Attendees included students. We had a homeless woman who attended who was very vocal about her needs, low-income residents of public housing, seniors, practitioners from Connecting for Good, Operation Breakthrough, Crosby Kemper attended from the library. And so we asked the folks at these meetings to read through the pathways and help us to ideate some of the pathways and ensure that we were actually hitting the nail on the head. And we really got resounding support from the community. A lot of the people said that they just weren't aware of everything that we were doing, and so they called upon us to do a better job of spreading the word about some of the programs that we already have in place, and they really just congratulated the city for taking this on. We also solicited input online via KC Momentum, My Sidewalk. We had the 6 policy priorities posted online for a 6-week period, and again, received a lot of expressions of support. For example, someone over at the Hispanic Economic Development Corporation commented and said, how important digital literacy skills are, specifically online banking and financial literacy. They gave an example of the high cost of mailing or faxing in LLC paperwork to the Secretary of State versus the lower cost of submitting online, and how that could create a barrier for someone who doesn't have online access that seeks to start a business. We also received support on Facebook. I don't know if you guys saw my post, but somebody actually commented that the Digital Equity Strategic Plan is one of the best documents they've ever read in their life, which might be a stretch, but it sure made me feel good. And so that's, an update. Rick is going to walk you all through the actual changes to the plan based off the input we received.
Yeah, so this slide shows the 5 principal paths that we're defining as the path from digital inclusion to economic mobility. This is where we're going to develop the outcomes and efforts of this. The implementation of this plan will show up as people move through these 5 or 6 steps. On collaboration, to promote digital equity priorities, I was invited to attend San Antonio's Digital Inclusion Summit, their first summit last week, and they're talking to us about how we've helped develop the Kansas City Coalition for Digital Inclusion. The representatives here, our chair, Carrie Coogan, is here. She'll speak, I think, during question and answer. But the issues I think came up in the last presentation were really what are some of the suggestions or what are some of the projects we've got going. So related to the plan changes, we added the definition for the CHIP, the Community Health Improvement Plan, provided a full definition of digital literacy. This references the pages those were made. We met, as McClain pointed out, with the Housing Department. They've given us 4 or 5 points that they will work on. One is to, in their application processes, ask applicants to highlight their digital inclusion efforts or where digital equity plays a role in their organization. They have already for quite a while been requiring internet connectivity to be built into new projects that they're funding. And then in the coming year, 2018, digital equity will be part of their 5-year consolidated plan. So this plan will be developed to meet the needs of that 5-year consolidated plan. What did we do here? Oh, we added some clarification on using the internet not only to find a job, but also to find employment online. High-speed connectivity at home, there are thousands of job opportunities that could help someone find employment in their residence, which is significant to maybe the disabled community, others in the community that might find that opportunity. We also have seen that as internet speeds increase, the number of home-based businesses increase, and the success, profitability of those businesses increases. So with gigabit services available throughout the city, that's an outcome that we're hoping to be able to measure. And on that topic, one of the proposals in the plan is to pursue a Gigabit Opportunity Zone pilot project. Gigabit Opportunity Zones were proposed by then FCC Commissioner, he's now the FCC Chair, Ajit Pai, as a way to incentivize internet service providers to provide gigabit internet services in economically distressed neighborhoods. And the concept of federal incentives to help business growth in those neighborhoods. We're coming at it from the local level where we have many more resources to assist small business growth and success. So we have a few folks that are already providing housing for homeless vets and homeless artists and homeless students, homeless people in general. So we're working with them to bring KC SourceLink, KC BizCare's resources. We have a micro lender. We have an urban business growth initiative that is set to help people launch home-based businesses and businesses beyond that. So through this pilot program, we hope to bring more of our partners from the coalition in to help leverage education, employment, and entrepreneur support or small business support throughout our neighborhoods. Because the fact in Kansas City is that Google Fiber has built out gigabit connectivity through most of our, including economically distressed neighborhoods. Another example of a program we're championing in the plan is this Community Learning Center network. We're finding that organizations like Dubois Learning Center and Connecting for Good, Surplus Exchange, have been building community learning centers in area churches, in their locations, and of course we have our community centers with learning labs. The concept here would be that wherever a resident might go to access a computer lab, they'll have an equally good experience with the equipment that's there, with the technology that's available, and the third item we've pointed out here is creating a curriculum, more or less. Because I mean, it's one thing to say, well, you have the internet at your hands and you can go in and search for information on any topic you want. In fact, at one of our community meetings, it was the senior woman who had come in and said, I'm not online, but I need to be. And trying to explain the relevance of that to her, we asked, well, you know, what are some of your hobbies? And she said, well, I like reading. And said, well, who's your favorite author? And she said, Truman Capote. So we quickly looked up Truman Capote on YouTube and found an interview with Truman Capote and David Frost from sometime in the 70s. And so when I turned that on, she was immediately drawn to that. So this learning center concept through wikikc.org that we created in partnership with our Code for America program a few years back has basically pages where you can add your favorite learning tool. So that it's full of information on online banking. One of the partners in the coalition, IC, with Money Smart KC, so how to manage your finances online. So those tools will be built in this community learning center. We showed a video at the business session presentation on our digital upcycling program. We want to expand that program to bring more participants into that. The business community, regional governments, we've been talking to some of the local governments involved in Core 4 about participating, and this will increase the supply of computers, tablets, smartphones, and other devices in our digital inclusion initiatives. At this point, the city is donating our surplus equipment to Surplus Exchange, and then that equipment is being refurbished and was sold to residents at the Housing Authority, I think for $50, $55. Connecting for Good was there. And then that leads to I got one more point after that. But the Digital Scholars Program. This is a partnership with the Full Employment Council to offer opportunities to 16 to 24-year-olds to find entry-level employment in the technology field. They have worked with they've worked with Surplus Exchange, Dubois Learning Center, the Public Library, Esteem Village, and Surplus Exchange. Connecting for Good. And the benefit of that program is they're exposed to, like at Surplus Exchange, they're helping to refurbish these computers that the city is providing. The photograph here, these are three young men that William Wells at Banneker Charter Academy, William runs Esteem Village. These are three gentlemen that participated in Digital Scholars. They've gone on to, one of them now is interning at HNTB. They have kind of been the champions of the program. They've been on a few internet radio shows talking about their work with Esteem Village. So in expanding this program, we'll put more effort into tracking the success that these participants are having in finding full-time employment.
Surplus Exchange ended up hiring one of the digital scholars full-time, and so we hope to increase employment opportunities through this program.
And the last example I have is this program that would provide internet services for recipients of minor home repair and weatherization program benefits. Today, we put funding into upgrading furnaces and water heaters and insulating houses. KCP&L has a program where you can get the Nest thermostat, a $250 web-enabled, mobile app-controlled thermostat that's free. But what we haven't been doing is when we leave that resident, we don't provide them with the tools to how to maximize their energy savings, their cost savings for that program. So through this program, we would work with internet service providers to connect recipients of these programs. We'd partner with the utilities, Kansas City Power and Light. We've had conversations with them over the past years or so to develop online tools that would be usable by these residents to maximize their energy savings, and then partner with digital inclusion organizations like Connecting for Good and Surplus Exchange again to provide the training and That's some quick examples of what we're proposing in the plan, and so we're available to any questions you might have.
Thank you. You guys did a lot of work on putting this together, a lot of important work, and it's rather dense material in the sense that it's not exciting, but it's necessary to make sure that our communities have a competitive edge. And so I appreciate the work you guys have put into this. There are some questions from committee. We had a couple of sidebars. So if you guys, who wants to go first?
You want to go ahead, and then I can do my next?
Yeah, I just, I've had a chance to review the plan, particularly your 21 recommendations. I think they're good recommendations. Always with anything, it comes down to a finite pot of money and how you spend it. But I think it is important for the council to take the position of saying to the city manager, present us within 6 months a plan on how we do this. And I think at that point, with real options before us, we'll be able to make hard decisions. But I think this very effectively lays out a plan and a footprint on how we get to that plan in 6 months, and specifically what should be included in that plan. So I also would commend you on your work on this.
Councilwoman Hall.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for taking our edits and notes that we've made and actually using them and implementing them. So I appreciate that. I think this is a great program. You know, my husband and I, our goal is always for our kids to be more successful and do better than what we do. And we can't ask our children to have grow for and reach for a better future if we don't give them the tools that they need when they're young. And so many of us in Kansas City take for granted that I can just pick up my phone and I can just get on the internet. When my kids' data plan beeps that they can't have any more data, they don't understand that. And that's a reality for them. But there's other kids who don't even get to have a data plan to hit. And so we want to make sure that all the kids in our community, and obviously everywhere, but the ones that we can affect change for are here in Kansas City. And we want to do that, and I'm really grateful that you have stepped up and done the information that you've had, because the actual slide that I'm looking at is the one that says defining the path from digital inclusion to economic mobility and entrepreneurship. We know that our society is so entrepreneurial driven now, and that's really an interesting thing to say because that's where we started. A million years ago, you know, this is where we started, was entrepreneurs starting the way and paving the way to be successful in our communities. And if we want to hope for them to be that way for the future, we need to give them those tools. And however those look, I'm on board and I'm willing to help you with that. So I think this is a great program. The things that I have that are just kind of in my head, something that some of my constituents are really working on hard in the Northland, of course we want to do it everywhere in the city, but we're taking it in baby steps, is finding employment opportunities for youth with disabilities. That is a critical problem that we have we have so many resources for youth with disabilities, whatever kind of disability it is, physical or mental disability, when they're in the elementary program. But once they graduate from high school, 18 to 21 years old, depending on where they are on that spectrum, we put them out there and we say, go find a job. And your tools really lend themselves to that. The problem that I would say that I don't have an answer for, and I'm not sure you do either, so I'm not going to ask you to come up with one right now, and something that Sarah, I think, definitely needs to also help address is we want to find youth with disabilities jobs. However, if we find them a really great job that they can do, then they're hindered by how much money they can make. And those aren't Kansas City issues. We don't get to decide what the state level of funding is that they can make. But we need to talk about that because we're working on ways to give them opportunities. And then we're saying, okay, but wait, now all your Medicare and coverages are going to be canceled. So there's a balance. And I want to make sure that we achieve that while making them be successful, while making them have the benefits that they still need on a daily basis to just function in the life that they have. So that's a awkward issue, I guess.
And that came up in our conversations with the whole person, that I believe it's $873 a month.
That's it?
Just in the state of Missouri. Other states have like a $200,000 cap. We have a $2,000 annual cap of income you can keep in your possession.
As a disabled person?
So
Yeah, for income being made.
So those are conversations we've started with the whole person. We had a meeting with Alpha Point last year about opportunities they provide. They work primarily with the visually impaired community, and they're a national organization, and they have call centers or distributed call centers where you can work from home. So with high-speed connectivity, a disabled person can work from home, and then you're taking transit out of their day,
Overcoming those
options that make
barriers.
employment harder to find. So we might be able to find employment opportunities for more people through these programs. And, the income limits.
Well, I'm working on that. I've been meeting with Treasurer Schmidt because he is the one who introduced the ABLE Act for Missouri. He has a nonverbal child with a disability, so it's obviously near and dear to him. But I think if we get some more state momentum of people at the state level who are excited about it and who can help us come up with some ways, it may be a good partnering tool. I'm not going to try and tell them how to legislate because I don't want them to tell me how to legislate, but we need to partner together to make this make sense, because if we're saying we want to do this, but then we're hindered by something else, then it doesn't matter how pretty our presentation and our hopes are. It's not going to work for some section of the group. So that's that question, and obviously I want to be involved in that dialogue, however that works.
Okay.
I would love for you to come up to the Northland and present. You said you've had all these these meetings everywhere, but as we get forward, obviously we want to meet with the North Kansas City schools, the Liberty schools, Northland neighborhoods. We have a great group of people up there that are very engaged. But just like what you said, McClain, people don't know what they don't know. And so they don't know that this is an opportunity. We need to educate them. One thing you mentioned too, Rick, about the Veterans Community Project, who is the group in Kansas City who do the tiny homes for homeless vets, they are opening their outreach center on March 30th. They're doing a launch, and in that building, they want to have all those services, and they don't want to reinvent the wheel. They want to take your services that you already have and offer them to the people in need in their community. And I would love to help connect that. I know Councilwoman Laura is very involved in creating ways to help the homeless vets in Kansas City, and this is another tool where they can partner with you on those job opportunities. And then I only have one more comment. You keep saying in all this stuff, we got to bring the people together. We need to have it be a 5-block radius or whatever to make this make sense so kids aren't walking for miles to try to get internet access at the local library. Last Saturday, we were at the Southeast Community Center for the budget hearing, and as I was driving around in the community, it was really nice to see that I have a community center, and then just a half a block down the way, I have a library and a church. And those are all right there together, and it's in such a nice area. The sidewalks were great. There was lots of lights so they could cross the street safely, and that's the kind of opportunity we need in all the areas of the city. So I think that's a really great I guess that's a good example of what it could look like if we have all those kinds of tools and components for healthy kids, physical, mental, emotional, educational, all right together. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
A couple of questions I had was around the inclusion project. So the Community Learning Center Network, which is to move forward on the last point Councilman Hall made. Do we have a network in place of potential partnerships involved, or how do we prioritize those relationships?
Yes, we do. That's a really positive thing that we've identified, and has been ongoing. Dubois Learning Center has been at it for quite a number of years, and I'm not sure how many facilities they've connected, but they work with neighborhood churches, and they provide, for a while they were providing wireless Wi-Fi services beamed to these locations so that the computers had internet access. Harrison May has been leading that effort at Dubois for really, again, quite a number of years. Connecting for Good has built, I think the number was 82 community learning centers, and that ranges from maybe 2 computers to 10 or 20 computers at different locations. And Surplus Exchange has
2, Morningstar, Seacon and Morningstar.
Yeah, and those are the recent examples. They've been doing this for a while as well. The photograph here is at Morningstar Family Life Center, and just as an example of kind of back to that question of the city's role in participation, it's not always funding. Mainly, I'm seeing our role is like a number of things we do at the city is just connecting and convening, connecting the people that have the needs and with the people that have the resources, and then making sure that things move forward. So I've been working with Pastor Miles for a number of years as he's, the slog that he's been through to build Morningstar. So we're walking through Morningstar, and we got to a room labeled Computer Lab, and it was empty. And he said, well, a lot goes into opening a center like this, and he hadn't had the time to do that. So we were able to call Bob Akers, who at that point was at Surplus Exchange. Bob has moved on to East Stewards, which is another great partnership for the city. But Bob brought his staff. They brought 19 computers in. I believe they brought this furniture in as well. They not only brought the computers, but they rewired the internet connectivity and the Wi-Fi connection points in the building to maximize that use. And this was a photograph that Pastor Miles sent of the happy kids at the computers.
So where is this network? What do I find these 82 locations plus the other additional you mentioned?
That's really what we need to work on is to develop a comprehensive map, bring those partners in to have the conversation of forming the network. We've had preliminary discussions because it would include Parks and Recs community centers, the public libraries, along with these nonprofit
Churches,
private
schools, whomever, asset mapping, the various places where people can access the internet and put it on a map and a list and saying,
And I think that's helpful. So if it's put at, obviously you put it on the internet, people who don't have internet don't get it. So that's kind of not where you would go. The map would be good if the map was put into places of hubs where the public goes, the health department, city hall, on public transit buses, ATA buses, in the community centers, because they go to these places now to access, and so it's probably not always the most convenient place, but it's where they know to go. And so if we make that information available at those popular connection points to make sure that we can disperse people to consider the other options as well in their community.
You're exactly right, and we've included that conceptually as a pathway in the plan.
Okay. All right, and one other thing, the feedback. You had a pretty wide variety of people who participated in the engagement sessions. Where was that information captured, and what were some of the highlights, if you guys have anything to share?
Sure. So I printed off the online comments that we got on KC Momentum. I'm happy to share a copy with you.
That'd be helpful.
And then we took handwritten notes at the community meetings and sign-in sheets so we could put together those notes for you if you'd like those as well.
Well, I'm just curious to hear, because the community feedback is always the most pure.
Okay.
And, the unedited version, particularly the homeless woman and her needs. Obviously, they're much different from what you and I's needs would be if my Wi-Fi is down. you know, because that often leads to some other things that we probably should be considering as well as barriers that most people who aren't similarly situated don't even consider.
So she spoke very highly of the resources at the library and said that she goes there on a daily basis to get online, to watch videos. And this particular woman had a professional degree, but had fallen on hard times. So she was, you know, very adept at digital literacy skills. And so she talked about basically her helping other people and what their limitations were. One limitation that she spoke to in terms of current access is just library hours and how to gain access outside of those hours. And so that just kind of got our wheels turning on, you know, most places have a 9 to 7 or 9, you know, whatever hours of operation. And so we haven't yet come up with a solution, but her identifying that problem for us at the very least got our mental wheels turning, and we need to find access outside of those hours. The senior lady who attended the community session at KC North was very spirited and vocal, and she walked into the room and said, you know, I don't have a smartphone, I don't need one, and I don't really like all this internet stuff, until Rick asked her what her interests were, and she said reading and cooking and recipes. And once we showed her that she could access all this stuff on YouTube, her eyes got big and she was very much engaged.
She wanted an iPad. No.
So it turned out that we were talking to her for a while, and Michael Liimatta is in the room with us. He was at the meeting. That finally we said, well, let's see your phone, and she pulled it out.
And it was a smartphone.
It was a smartphone.
She didn't even know that, because what you don't know, you don't know. She didn't even know that she had a smartphone. She didn't know that she had an email address. She has a son who is in the armed services. I think she said Vietnam or somewhere out in the Pacific. And she said, my primary interest is being able to communicate with my son. He sends me pictures of my grandkids. He's sent me a tablet that he's uploaded with pictures. And she knew nothing of Skype, nothing of FaceTime. And those are the types of skills, those baseline skills that we take for granted, but our seniors aren't as familiar with.
And I think in light of Representative Shavett's comments this week on low-income residents focusing their resources on health care rather than smartphones is significant here, because the woman's email address, once we started talking about that, was created when she signed up for health care. And it was necessary for her then to
Access the
operate
exchange.
with that. So those statements, the most pointed thing about making the statement that the smartphone is the thing or the iPhone is the thing you should not be spending your money on, go to healthcare. The smartphone is critical infrastructure in our healthcare network today, and that came out in that meeting.
In addition to that, healthcare probably costs thousands of dollars a year. You're not going to fund your healthcare needs by not having a smartphone.
Exactly.
That is not, I mean, you'd have to have, I don't know, 1,000 smartphones that you were paying for, each on a different plan, to actually reach the point where you were even beginning to impact having the cost to provide for your own health care.
Okay. Well, Councilman Hall, you have anything else? Okay. Is there any public testimony on this ordinance that's before us today?
Hello, my name is Michael Liimatta, and I have had the pleasure of working with McClain and Rick and other city officials on digital inclusion for almost going on 7 years, since the first time that Google Fiber came to Kansas City. It was obvious that we had a great resource that a big portion of the city would never be able to take a part of because of the digital divide. So our response, I founded Connecting for Good with Rick Dean and served as its executive director for 5 years in Kansas City. And then last year, I had the opportunity to represent Kansas City in Washington, D.C. as the manager of Connect Home at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Kansas City was one of 28 entities, 27 cities in the Choctaw Nation that participated in Connect Home. And I could say it wasn't just my opinion, but the opinion of all the staff and partners of Connect Home that Kansas City was one of the shining stars on a national level in the Connect Home efforts as well as in digital inclusion as a whole. I think it's due in large part because we have an excellent network of grassroots individuals and organizations that have spent a lot of time and hours making sure that the most vulnerable citizens of our city are able to access the internet and all of its benefits. I can tell you honestly, I'm very excited to be here today because this plan represents about 6 years of hard work on all of our parts to raise the consciousness of our citizens that we cannot be a great city if we aren't a great city for everyone who lives here. We have become a hub of entrepreneurship. We're becoming one of the Midwest leaders in high-tech industry, and I believe that makes digital equity one of the most important social justice issues that face us today. It's amazing that there are a lot of large cities like Boston and Seattle that actually have staff members on the city who are concerned with digital equity. Yet in actual progress, Kansas City outshines all of them. And I really urge you to consider the fact that this is a historic moment. I think it's going to put our city at a whole entirely new level to be thinking about this in a strategic and very purposeful and intentional effort to include all of our citizens and make sure that they can access all of the benefits that the internet and digital learning affords them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your help on this initiative. One more, come on.
Hi, my name is Tom Esselman. I am the current CEO of Connecting for Good. So if Michael represents the foundation in the past of what happened to establish Connecting for Good in partnership with the city and with the coalition of organizations focused on the digital inclusion, I want to make sure you know we also represent the present and the future. And I wanted to make a comment because I too share with Michael and with Rick and McClain, and I think all of us in the room, our excitement about this moment. I want to particularly call out a comment that one of you cited that McClain had made about the idea that people don't know what they don't know. And what's so exciting to me, and Councilwoman Kennedy, you asked a question about the network of community learning centers. And the biggest idea and the greatest asset that we have and that we're continuing to build in Kansas City is this network of places, large and small, core institutions like the library system, and small grassroots places like Connecting for Good's labs, churches, community centers. And I want to make sure that as we support the idea that this plan gets, this resolution gets passed, and the awareness that it generates starts to spread, that we build off of that awareness generating piece to make more people, more individuals, more families in communities that have never had access to internet, whether it's at home or at their place of work or school, that they recognize that there are these access points that provide both the training and the tools. And I want to call out when I see a lot of activity around this congressman's comments about the iPhone versus healthcare, that we don't let that obscure the larger issue, that for many people, even the choice to buy an iPhone because it gives them mobile access to the internet, that still obscures the fact we got to make sure that they know that there's places where they can go to learn more skills that can help them be more connected. So even if they are spending the money on the mobile phone, they need to know that their churches, their community centers, their schools, their libraries are filled with people who represent these grassroots organizations that work in a coalition to make sure that they have the skills to get themselves up that path toward economic mobility and sustainable independence. And that's what's so exciting about what we're doing in partnership with the city and why this resolution, I think, is a very significant one, not only for our city, but for what it represents around the country. Thank you.
We heard a couple different comments about, about the choosing between the technology or the healthcare, regardless of, the political posture that was taken when that statement was made. It just points to the reality that of the need for us to educate and to further this discussion with our government partners at other levels, as Councilwoman Hall said, to make sure that we are making sure that we are representing those interests and reflecting or being able to point out how the impact is of one or the other, or that they're not competing interests, or they're not mutually exclusive for that matter. So I thank you all again for your work on this and leadership, and that we're going to do our part here in Kansas City and work with our partners at the state and federal level to try to create equity here in Kansas City. Is there a motion on the ordinance?
Madam Chairman, I move...
Oh, I'm sorry, the resolution.
Resolution. And we don't have to ask for advancement because they go the next day? Or do we have to ask for advancement?
No.
Okay. I move that Resolution 170097 be recommended due pass to the full council.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? The motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a couple other legislative items that were listed on the docket for today, but my understanding is that one of the attorneys is still reviewing the documents and making some considerations for discussion. And Jim, I know you're here today to discuss these ordinances, but I believe we're going to hold them for another week.
Okay. And Madam Chairman, let me say, I think interested parties, by the time we meet next, will have had more than adequate opportunity to review these two ordinances. And I, for my part, am anticipating that we will move forward on the 22nd of March.
Well, it'll be the following week. Well, yeah, that's right, the 22nd, because
Yeah.
we're out next week.
Yeah.
So March 22nd. Thank you, Jim. Okay, and additional business, we have an update from a new commander at East Patrol. Madam Clerk, if you would call. I guess I just called it, but okay. If you guys would come. Yeah.
There will be an update by KCPD East Patrol Division. I apologize.
It's okay. Major Thomas,
Yes, ma'am.
welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Major Thomas, the new commander at East Patrol, and I've been there for about 4 months now. So when I first give you the boundaries of East Patrol, we cover just over a 45 square mile radius, and we serve over 82,000 citizens. The boundaries to the north are the Missouri River. To the south is basically Swope Parkway, but it kind of goes into different areas as you get further to the east. And then Wabash to our west, and then the city limits to the east. We serve the city council districts of the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th district. At East Patrol right now, we are currently allotted or slated for 125 officers. Right now, I'm down 8 officers, and as I give the presentation, you'll kind of see the impact that has and the strain that has. My command philosophy at East Patrol, and hopefully I'm not going to go too deep in the weeds here, I'm the kind of person that likes to sit back for about 2 months. I trust the leadership that's been put there in place before me. I like to take a look how things are operating, and then from there, after about 2 months, if I see things that I would like to be done differently, I start implementing those changes. And with that, I'm at about, like I said, about 4 months right now. So right now, I've asked the division or the acting or the assistant division commanders to focus on 3 things that are extremely important to me. The first being crime reduction, and I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail on everything that we're doing as far as crime reduction, but it involves the social network analysis to make sure that we're focusing on the individuals that are causing most of the problems in the areas that we're trying to make improvements in. And with that, the top 3 crime locations within East Patrol. We look at crime data. We get input from the officers, and we always carry or maintain 3 areas that rotate from each watch so that all the officers know that these are the 3 areas that we're focusing on in our spare time. In addition to that, we also work with several elements outside of East Patrol, including the Violent Crimes Enforcement Division and Narcotics and Vice, to help us out with areas that include those types of criminal traits. Community relations. This is extremely important to me. And when I've met with most of the officers at East Patrol, the sergeants, and community relationships is more than just saying hi. It's more than me coming to a meeting and just addressing you, telling you all the great things that are going on at East Patrol. It's actually getting to know people as people. So what I've challenged them to do is when they do have free time, if you see somebody out raking their leaves, that's somebody that cares about their neighborhood. Stop and talk to them. So let's get back to the point of where the community sees us as people. They don't necessarily see us for the uniform that we wear, but they see us as people, and then we in turn can see them as people. I think from there, and I've had other things that I'll talk about later on in the presentation, where we have done that, and there have been great dividends that have been paid because of the trust and the relationships that are developed. And then the last one for right now is morale. That's the first thing when I come in that I want every officer to know that the command staff and the supervisors that are assigned at East Patrol are going to do everything that we can to make sure that morale is as best as possible. And I define that as every single employee at East Patrol should feel that they're valued, regardless of what their job is. So that makes sure that we're taking the time to talk to them, not just about what's going on, out in the field or what kind of equipment that they need, but talking about their families, understanding, the dynamics of understanding myself, the dynamics that the job can play in your personal life and the stress that can carry over into the family. We want to make sure that we're identifying those things and that we make sure that we're doing everything within our power to make sure that the officers are being cared for and that they know that they're being cared for. I've found in this model, when people feel like they're valued, when people feel like you do care for them, if they're not big fans of community relations like I am, then perhaps maybe, I'm going to do that because that guy cares about me. And if that's important to him, I'm going to go out and do what he thinks needs to be done. So those are the 3 priorities that I've set already at East Patrol after that 2 months. And we're moving into the crime reduction and we're moving into the community relationships. I think it's important that I try to address the audience that I'm speaking to from the city council standpoint and who we are partnered with here at the city and some things that we got going on that I think are making a difference in our neighborhoods. One is called the Demolition Eight, which Mr. Shoemaker oversees, and there's a relationship with Mr. Shockey and Greg Smith at East Patrol to not only, it used to be we're identifying the what we felt were the 8 vacant or nuisance properties that we felt needed to be demolished within the northeast area. We've now expanded that into all of East Patrol, so we're going to make sure that we focus on 8, and we'll keep 8 on there. As one comes down, we'll add a new one to it. But there's an assessment process that takes place before we add that particular location to the list, and a lot of that comes from the feedback and those relationships that I talked about with the community. Blighted areas and trying to address blight. I have Captain Mills through the direction of Chief Forte, which I think hopefully I just don't see how this can fail. But as I drive around East Patrol, I see trash and I see blight all over the place. And so what Captain Mills has been tasked with doing is identifying the most violent crime areas within East Patrol, homicides, violent crimes. Take a look because usually there is trash and there is blight there, and let's start addressing the blight. So we're going to be using the Metropolitan Community Service Program and what they offer in helping us clean up trash the community members, and then the police to take care of that. Where the city comes in is we will generate piles and piles of trash, and of course we'll need to develop that relationship with solid waste to come out and make sure that they remove that trash in a timely fashion. Officer expectations, I think it's important that you know what I've told the officers about my expectations of them. And one of them is really near and dear to me, and that's that we have to treat all people with respect. We have to look at people as people, regardless of what our past experiences are or the things that have happened maybe on a previous call or even being shot at, after a car chase. We still have to look at people as people. I've told them that they should never be the reason why something goes bad. They should never be the reason why there is a complaint. They should never be the reason why something escalates. What we do is when we show up, we assess the situation, and if the person's at level 5, we automatically go up to level 5. But we should never be the one that carries that bad call to the next call, or that bad experience maybe that we had at home to that call, and be the person that actually escalates the situation. Tell you, officers are doing great things at East Patrol in the short time that I've been there, and it really warms my heart when I don't ask to receive this information. It happens to just come to me. And Officer Danielle Williams had a domestic violence case involving a female who was severely beaten, who had a 4-year-old child, and there was a domestic violence advocate that was at the hospital with her. It was decided that we needed to move her out of the Kansas City area, and she was relocated probably over 30 minutes away. The domestic violence advocate said that she could not go that far. And Officer Williams took it upon herself that she was going to transport the entire family up to that shelter. Those are the things that I'm asking of the officers is to do those extra things on those calls that are going to make a difference, because in every interaction that we have with the community, we have a chance to make a supporter of the police department, or we have the opposite of that. We could make somebody that has a negative attitude about the police. So I ask them in every opportunity, do everything that you can to try to make a supporter. Some new initiatives, and maybe I think this is going to kind of tie in with the top 3 priorities that I've set forth at East Patrol. We have 3 new initiatives that involve morale. We have 4 new initiatives that involve community engagement, and we have 4 new initiatives that involve crime reduction. And I've selected 2 because I didn't want this to go on, until lunchtime. I believe Colonel Oakman told me I had a 5-minute time limit, and I'm already probably surpassed, but these are very important to me. And I think this first one that I'm going to talk about really talks about, when I talk about the partnerships and the relationships that we need to form, it's the Northeast Violence Reduction Initiative. And that initiative has on it, because we know as police we can't solve all the problems. I mean, we're not on every street corner like we would like to be. We can't be in front of every problem house like we'd like to be. So with that, it's the understanding that we need as much help as we can get. So this group, which was actually organized through combat, has LISC, has the Kansas City School District, has the Northeast Chamber of Commerce, who's going to bring in business partners, they're going to bring in neighborhood association leaders, they're going to bring in the faith-based community. It has the Kansas City Police Department, and then we're identifying others that are actually going to make up this committee. And the whole idea behind it is I also have learned, I've been on 25 years, that we can't arrest our way out of a problem. So it's taken a look at those things on, especially Independence Avenue, that are causing the street crimes, the prostitution, the drug activity. We can arrest a prostitute every single day, and it's not going to take care of the problem. We have to get them the help. So this team, we will identify the key resources that we feel need to be at that table that can actually get people help. So whether that's from a prostitution issue that they have, a personal choice that they make, a drug problem that they have. It's that we need to look beyond arresting people and getting to the root cause and getting them help. That's a direction that I definitely want to take. The last one is probably my number one priority and probably the deepest on my heart. And that involves the faith-based community, partnering with the faith-based community. In my time, on this department, I've been through some bad times. I've been through times where, I went through a divorce. It wasn't just because of the job, but the job had brought out the worst in me because of all the things that I saw on a daily basis. And that carried over into my family life, and it led to a divorce, and it led to the ripping apart of a family. And I remember going through that some probably 15 years ago, and I was at a point to where I really didn't have a whole lot of hope. I didn't, and I to make a long story short, in August of 2013, I found true hope. I found true hope in the church. And when I look at the person that I used to be and the person that I've become, there has been a heart change in the person that's sitting before you right now. Okay? And I know that if that hope can change me, then it can change others, because I've met people that are in the faith community that were drug dealers, that were committing drive-by shootings, that were committing robberies. They found that same hope, and they had a heart change. So what I am going to try to do is, I've been meeting with clergy, a couple different groups. Every opportunity I get, I'm meeting with pastors, and it's you know what? Your church doesn't have to work together. I understand maybe there's some issues with maybe working together, but what you do need to do, and what I'm asking you that you have to do, because we as the police can't do this ourselves, is if you just take a neighbor close to your church, one family, or you take a block, or you take 3 or 5 or 7. I'm not going to put a limitation on how small or how big the area needs to be, but you need to spread hope to people. I had a very wise person tell me one time, and he just gave this saying, this phrase, and it's stuck with me ever since I found hope. He said, the most hopeless situation a person can find themselves in is to believe that there's no hope. So with me, knowing what that hope is, that's my number one priority, is to begin working with those churches and working with the pastors. And so when we have a homicide a block from the church, it's, you know what, there's a homicide a block away from your church. Has anybody from the church reached out to anybody in that family? Because I'm telling you right now, I can guarantee you those people are struggling. They're hurting. They need help. And even if it's just do what you do, pray for people. Go over there and pray for them. Take them meals. So these are big things that I have in my mind. You're going to find that I think really big, but I am the person that lives by that hope that it can be accomplished. So with that, I'll open it up to questions that you may have for me. Hopefully that wasn't too far deep in the weeds for you this morning. And I thank you for having me.
You were singing music to my ears, Major Thomas. I'm just very happy to hear your holistic approach to dealing with problems in the urban core. And so we're very lucky to have you at East Patrol, probably the highest volume of violent crimes in the city. And so to have someone that's a person of faith or hope, or however you describe it, to be in the midst of that chaotic environment is very refreshing to Kansas City. So thank you for your service. If you guys have questions. Councilwoman Hall?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I wrote down the things that you are prioritizing: the crime reduction, community relations, and the morale. All those things are so very important, but they're not very quantifiable at first. And so I think we live in such a I want to know right now society, because everything is instantaneous at my fingertips. And that's not real life. Real life is that things take time to develop. And so sitting back and watching the people that are under your command for a while to get the idea of where they are and what they're doing and their past experiences makes a lot of sense. The problem is we like to see numbers and we and everybody else like to see how things are going. And so it takes some time. And hope doesn't just happen overnight. As you said, it took you a while, and we don't just sometimes have a transformation overnight, and nor do the people that we are serving. And so I love what you've said, and I 100% agree with you that all of us need to be a part of this. And the representatives from the health department were here earlier, and I know they feel that in all the different aspects of health in our community, and you represent a lot of them with the job you do every day, it takes a lot of time, and it takes more than one group of people to affect change. We can't arrest our way out of a problem, you're right. And I appreciate that you're willing to work with all the different groups of people in the community to take that on, and add me to the list of people that are willing to be part of your partnerships, because
all right, great. Thank you.
We want to help you help everybody so that we don't have continued crime. We'd like to reduce crime because we're increasing hope, for sure. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Councilman Lucas.
First of all, good to see you, my fellow committee members. I'll be quick. I knew you were on the agenda, so since I had the opportunity to come back, I wanted to make sure I said hello. We appreciate your service. This is a very important patrol division for us, and I know you deal with a lot in communities that I care a lot about, and so I thank you. I also want to thank you again for the words you were saying, and I preface it with this tale. I went to law school, and when I was in law school, I aspired to be like Councilwomen Kennedy and Councilwoman Shields and to be a prosecutor one day. And so I interned in a United States Attorney's office. And a prosecutor for whom I worked said, well, Quentin, you just need to understand there are good people and bad people. And I said, I don't know if that's the case, really. And what I just heard from your words and how you're talking about hope and how people can find hope is that where we give people some reason to care, to think about staying alive, to think about their families, to think about so many other things, we really have a holistic approach to, I think, addressing issues of criminality more than perhaps my friend in Albany, New York thought was the better approach. And so I'm excited to have you in Kansas City, and certainly excited to have you over East Patrol. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Councilman Shields.
Well, I just also want to extend a welcome and say thank you for your service to the city of Kansas City. On a slightly different topic, I also want to reach out to Deputy Chief Oakman and apologize to him because I said something in the budget hearing about not having received some information from him, and I actually had received it, I just overlooked it. So I wanted to take this opportunity to correct that record.
I'll just offer a few additional comments. You know, your priorities, crime reduction, community relations, and morale, are very important. We've heard the community demand us to be more effective at crime reduction, and obviously there's no magic bullet to make that happen, because there are a number of different reasons that crime is occurring, and when we get a handle on one, it pops up somewhere else in a different form. So it sounds like you understand that, and you understand what it takes to begin to manage that, which is the relationships within the community, to be able to increase our homicide solve rate, to be able to get more witnesses to cooperate in cases so we can get more convictions. And then more importantly, dealing with the morale. We expect you guys to go out and do a very difficult job every day. You know, we hear it from all departments of the city. But more importantly, you guys are faced with in-person, sometimes dangerous situations, and you want to feel supported. And so I'm happy to hear from what you've communicated today that your officers will feel that support from your leadership. I made comments yesterday at the the Board of Police Commissioners. I have the privilege of speaking to the board on a monthly basis, and I spoke with them about the wanting to support the officers, but comparing it similar to each patrol division, similar to how the Parks Department handles each community center. And each community center puts forth a business plan for their community, because each community is different, the needs are different, the demographic is different, and they put forth a business plan for each community center on how they're going to meet the needs of their respective community. And so it sounds like you've kind of taken a similar approach based on what you described on being able to deal with the uniqueness of East Patrol. And so I applaud you for your efforts. I don't know if you talked with Margaret Henry at all before you did that. I'm just joking. But that's a good approach to take, because it's different than it was when you were out at Metro.
Yes.
East is a lot different.
Absolutely.
You know, some of the same people overlap, but it's a different demographic. You've got the Northeast, it's just very diverse and very active. Then you have some of the center city parts that have the most need but may not be as organized.
Right.
And so how do you get stuff done in an environment like that? And it's going to be with these community relationships.
Right.
So thank you for acknowledging that and your leadership on that. Anything else from the committee? Okay. Well, I think this is probably one of the best presentations we've gotten so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
We
right.
appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
It's funny you said that. I just tweeted, probably one of the best updates.
Yeah. Good job. All right. Anything from you, Oakman? Deputy Chief?
It's now we're going to have to deal with his exploded head now on that presentation.
Oh, well, listen, I can guarantee you something's going to happen in your zone. Where we're you bought some goodwill today, is what I'll tell you. We also had representatives from the Office of Citizens Complaints. Merle and his chief investigator were here present. We went a little long on our first legislative item, and so they had to leave, but I just wanted to acknowledge that they did come over. For those of you all who understand that we do not have local control here, the city police department is governed by the Board of Police Commissioners. However, the Office of Citizens Complaints is an independent department that reports to the board that handles citizens' complaints. And so when persons have challenges or if there's some misunderstandings that occur, we encourage the community to use that process to report those issues. You also can go talk to the command staff at each department as well, but the formal process is Office of Citizen Complaints, and I've encouraged the board to make that department more visible. And so part of that is them coming to this committee meeting and just being, being more visible in the public, let people know that they exist. So thank you all for coming over, and maybe next time we'll put them up early and give them a chance to speak if they choose to. Anything else?
Can I just say very briefly, as you know, the governor appoints our Board of Police Commissioners and others, and the governor will be here tomorrow. And there's an event. The details escape me. So, Major, do you know the time for the public event? 7 p.m. and what's the location? And
If you come to the mic.
Can you come to the mic, please?
I know it's on Prospect.
A Metropolitan.
so. Okay. So tomorrow at 7 o'clock, Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church, there will be I believe it's kind of a walk to acknowledge crime. I think the governor's looking to get to know people in the community. The police department will be there and others. And so that's an opportunity to actually get to know our state's highest elected official and also interact with the Kansas City Police Department. And you may catch a random city council person or two there as well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you all. Is there any more business before this body? Okay. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.